everyone, and welcome back. We have Lindsay Gallagher here from the Johnny Appleseed Natural Parks system here, and we're going to be talking about something that I know many people think about Halloween and this creature, but they're kind of here year long, and it's the bat. The famous bat.
Yeah, good morning, Chris. So spooky season may be officially over, but here in Ohio, bats are actually year-round residents. And rather than being super spooky, they're actually some really cool critters. So the first thing I'll say is bats are mammals, just like you and I. Whereas we consider humans primates, bats are called chiropterans, and that comes from their mammalian order, Chiroptera. It means hand wing. So if we were to stretch out our hand and place it next to a bat's wing, we would actually find that there are homologous structures. The type and arrangement of bones in there are the same. Now, bat wings are used for flight, just like other wings are. And bats are the only mammal capable of true flight. You might have heard of the flying squirrel. Those guys don't technically fly. They only glide.
Kind of float or?
They fall with style, if you will. But bats are capable of true flight. However, bat wings are different than bird wings. They're not as strong as bird wings, and bats cannot get a running start with their bodies, nor can they take off from a grounded position. However, when we think about bats, what do you notice about how they live, move, and position their bodies?
Well, when you see them, they're usually just hanging upside down.
Exactly, and that is essential to bat flight. So all they have to do is release their grip and then fall into their fly. And speaking of flies, bats are great at eating insects. We call them insectivores. They can eat upwards of 1,000 insects in an evening. And here in Ohio, with our extensive farming industry, they're actually really great at pest control and a farmer's best friend. Now, here in Ohio, we have 10 known bat species. 4 of those are considered solitary. They actually migrate out of our area in winter. But the other 6 are what we think of as the bats that stay in caves and mines and rock crevices, right? So they are communal, they'll roost together, and bats are considered one of our true hibernators. So during this time, they are drastically reducing their metabolic output. Their body temperature drops, their breathing slows, their pulse slows, and they're not eating or drinking. So they will hunker down in the wintertime with other bats and last out that winter until spring comes.
Now, would that be in the caves or certain locations and trees maybe?
So in the summertime, bats can roost under the bark of trees. Shagbark hickory is a great example, but in the wintertime, it's too cold outside. So they're choosing the caves, abandoned mines, rock crevices, sometimes our homes, but tight places where they can hibernate throughout the winter.
Very nice.
Now, there are a lot of myths going around bats, right?
Yeah.
But those myths are just that. They are myths. So one of the myths we have is that bats are blind. And that's not true. Bats are nocturnal, so they do have poor vision in low light conditions, but they're supplementing that with echolocation. And in some parts of the world, bats are actually out during the day, so they have really large eyes and really great eyesight. Another myth is bats fly in your hair. They can, but they don't.
I just got it done.
Right? They don't do that on purpose. Bats are actually really curious, and so they're flying close to us to investigate us. Now, one of the more serious myths about bats is that bats carry rabies. And although it is true that some bats may be infected with rabies, it is false to say that all bats have rabies. And I should point out that other backyard critters can also carry rabies just as
So it's
easily.
probably rare, to be honest with you.
Indeed. So considering all the statistical sampling that they're doing, it is false to say that all bats have rabies. But the important thing to keep in mind as critters come into our backyards now, or maybe make our way into our homes in the wintertime, is to keep wildlife in the wild. And if you are having issues with bats, they are all federally or state protected. So make sure that you are contacting ODNR, you're contacting Ohio Wildlife Center, or professionals to help you with your wildlife issues.
Yeah, I know that when I was in Toledo once, I was at a friend's house and they had bats that were flying. It was at a barbecue and it was at night and they would just swoop down right in front of me and it would scare the living daylights out of me.
Well, they're expert hunters.
They are. And I know that there were little flies hanging around because it was summer and, you know, thank goodness those bats were, I guess, doing their due diligence of, you know, weeding out the population of the flies and getting a nice little barbecue themselves, I guess. But yeah, so it was a little scary, but at the same time, I knew that they were just out there doing their thing, and I was told they weren't going to harm me.
Exactly.
You know, it was just a little bit scary because they fly right in front of you.
Absolutely.
So.
They're curious. They're investigating. There's a place for all animals in our ecosystem.
That's right. And do they normally just do they stay away from humans normally, or do they just, like you said, they are curious?
They're curious, but they are doing their job. They're insectivores. They're going to be living their daily lives. They're not interested in coming around us. So when we are in the same area as them, when humans and animals have close contact, they're just going to be curious and maybe fly in and around. But they're not after us for any particular reason.
All right. Well, Lindsay Gallagher, thank you so much for joining us today for our wonderful show here, as we learn all about bats and myths, and they're fascinating creatures. And if you want to learn more, always stop by and ask anybody from Johnny Appleseed. They are so informative. And thank you so much. We'll see you in just a moment.